Y'all, we need to do better. Hello everyone and welcome back to The Chanel. Before we get into this topic, just a quick trigger warning and also an apology because I did not include a trigger warning at the beginning of my last video. That completely slipped my mind for some reason, so I'm very sorry if that was triggering for anyone. But also know that this video we will be discussing DV as well as child abuse. So please take care of yourself and click off of this video if you need to. And with that being said, let's get into it. Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is a Hulu reality TV show, and it centers on a group of moms who initially gained fame for creating mom talk, where they would make dance videos on TikTok, and this was pretty much spearheaded by Taylor, Frankie, Paul. All of these women are Mormon, so it came as quite a surprise when Taylor posted a TikTok revealing that her and her husband Tate had been soft swinging with other Mormon couples. She then revealed that her and her husband were getting a divorce because Taylor had acted outside of the bounds of their agreement, meaning she effectively cheated on her husband. So the show basically follows Taylor and the other moms of Mom Talk after Taylor's divorce. Taylor kind of functions as the main character of the show, and throughout the show we see her relationship with this man named Dakota begin to blossom, and it ends up being a very toxic relationship. Taylor had a daughter with her ex-husband, and then soon after she got with Dakota, they ended up pregnant, and now she has a child with him as well. Dakota and Taylor had an on-again, off-again relationship throughout the show, and like I said, it was very toxic on both ends. Though people do seem to side more with Taylor based on what they saw in the show, where Dakota seemed pretty manipulative and had kind of cheated on Taylor. Technically, they were on a break. It's like a Ross and Rachel situation. Very complicated. Well, anyway, this show became super popular. It was everything anyone could talk about. And because of this, Taylor was recruited as the Bachelorette, which is an extremely popular reality TV franchise. So this was a pretty huge deal for Taylor. Now, a disclaimer, I haven't actually watched the show. I got halfway through the first episode and I just couldn't get into it. I do know the general premise and I did my best to research the things that happened, but it's possible that I might miss some details, so I apologize for that in advance. However, for the topic of today's video, you don't really need to know what happens in the show because this is regarding an incident outside of the show. In 2023, court documents revealed that Taylor had been arrested and charged with DV as well as child abuse. The Salt Lake City Tribune was the first news source that I could see at least that had reported on the incident. The article says, during the altercation, Paul, 28, threw her phone and a wooden playset at the man, damaging his vehicle. Court documents state. Video of the altercation obtained by police also indicates Paul threw heavy metal chairs at the man that put holes in a wall, as well as kicked him and put him in a chokehold. Documents state. The man told Paul to stop throwing chairs because her 5-year-old daughter was next to him on the couch, but she then threw another chair which struck the child in the head, the footage indicates. The girl is heard crying after being hit, police said, and a detective was later informed that the child had a painful goose egg injury to her head. Court documents state. Okay, so already this is really heavy stuff. And note that this article was published in February of 2023. This incident happened 3 years ago. So this means that Hulu and ABC should have known about this incident before letting her on to The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, as well as The Bachelorette. Well, on March 19th, TMZ published an article with the actual footage from the incident. And y'all, the video is really disturbing. I will not be playing it here. The way that the Salt Lake Tribune describes the incident is exactly how it plays out in the video. Just know that the video is not for the faint of heart. You can hear her child screaming and crying in the background, so I definitely caution you if you do choose to seek it out. Well, Taylor had mentioned this incident in interviews, and I believe it's also addressed on the show, seemingly taking accountability for everything that happened. However, when she recounts the incident, she claims her child was not hurt. She excuses away the child charges by saying that the incident happened in front of her child, which is why she was charged, but her child was not harmed in the altercation. That's a flat out lie. It is true that if you expose a child to a DV incident, that is considered child abuse But the police report clearly states that the footage indicates that the child was hit. Although we can't see in the video that her child was hit, we do hear Dakota telling Taylor to stop hitting him and stop doing this in front of her daughter. And then when the chair hits her daughter in the head, you hear him saying, "Go check on your daughter, you hurt her." And she throws the blame back at him, accusing him of being the reason that her daughter was hurt. So what it sounds like she's saying is that her violent actions are a direct result of Dakota. And because of that, it's Dakota's fault that her child was hurt. It's also incredibly disturbing that she doesn't even attempt to console her daughter. Dakota repeatedly tells her to go check on her daughter, but she just ignores that the entire time and continues to chuck metal chairs at him and physically assault him. I think what's so unsettling about all of this in the first place is that she was hired on to The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and The Bachelorette despite both Hulu and ABC knowing of this incident. I feel like as soon as you hear child abuse, that should be an immediate red flag indicating that she should not have been hired. I mean, obviously, having a DV charge itself should be enough of an indicator to not cast someone in a TV show, but ethics in reality TV and in media is virtually non-existent. So I guess we can't expect any less. And unfortunately, this is something that I would expect out of large corporations and reality TV shows that are just really focused on making money. It's extremely disappointing, but it's not shocking in the slightest. ABC did end up canceling her season of The Bachelorette after a lot of outcry. The TMZ article was published on the 19th of March, and The Bachelorette was scheduled to premiere on Sunday, March 22nd. So this was literally days before the premiere, which also means that the show had already been fully taped, which again is disappointing that ABC thought it would be a good idea to have her on the show at all, but also weren't even planning on canceling it until people started calling them out. But I will say, because the show was already recorded, I can understand how this is a huge financial loss for ABC. However, ABC shouldn't have had her on the show in the first place. And y'all will not catch me feeling bad for corporations. Anyhow, what I really think is extremely disturbing is the public's reaction. I have seen people take sides in this using hashtags like Team Taylor, which is so weird and abysmal, considering that this is a DV incident in which there is video evidence of Taylor being the perpetrator. But the most popular argument that many people are using to justify Taylor's actions is reactive abuse. Before we talk any further about this, I want to make it very clear that reactive abuse is a very real thing and is unfortunately very common. Abusers will often probe their victim until they reach their breaking point, and when their victim finally snaps, they will use that as an opportunity to shift the blame onto them. I also want to acknowledge statistics show that 1 in 3 women versus 1 in 10 men aged 18 or older experience DV. So women are unfortunately more likely to experience DV. But people are claiming that Taylor is solely acting out of reactive abuse. They're basing this off of Dakota's behavior in the show, using this as a justification for Taylor physically assaulting Dakota. Did y'all watch the video? We have no idea the events that led up to the altercation, so we cannot definitively determine if this was a result of reactive abuse. The other thing is, it's not our job to determine if it was reactive abuse. And again, I understand that reactive abuse is a very real thing that happens. But Taylor is very clearly being increasingly violent in her actions, picking up metal chairs, throwing them at him, and doing so carelessly and without any regard for her daughter, who's literally in the room with them. And the other concerning thing is that you don't hear her child say anything. She doesn't scream, she doesn't cry out until she's physically injured when the metal chair hits her head, which is concerning to me because if she is not reacting at all while her mother is screaming and being extremely violent, then that tells me that this is a normal thing for her, and that is terrifying. I also see a lot of people say that Dakota deserves it for everything that he put her through. And I've also seen people claim that this incident shouldn't even be a reason for why her Bachelorette season was canceled, because Taylor had already taken accountability for it and has always been open and honest about her arrest. But that's simply not true, because Taylor was very adamant that her child was not hurt in the altercation.
I didn't know my daughter was downstairs on the couch and I was throwing stuff, and so I threw a chair like towards him, and so I was charged with child abuse because like it could have hurt her.
But it didn't hit your daughter.
No.
But the footage and the police report, as well as physical evidence of an injury on her child's head, says otherwise. Men are often not believed when they come out with their stories about being victims of DV. And while Dakota may very well be a person, I don't doubt that, that does not mean he can't be a victim here. And the counter argument that I'm seeing seems to be very popular to defend Dakota is the "if the roles were reversed" argument. I feel conflicted about this argument. In some ways, I think it can be helpful, but in other ways, I think it can minimize the true argument and dismisses a lot of nuances that are important in a situation that's not exactly black and white. For instance, this argument is used a lot to serve as proof of reverse racism. People who like to claim the argument that reverse racism exists use this analogy to criticize DEI initiatives like affirmative action, or to negate the existence of systemic racism. And the issue with this argument is that it ignores so much nuance and oversimplifies all of the other factors that contribute to systemic racism and historical marginalization of minority communities. Essentially, it creates this sense of false equivalence, assuming that some situations exist in a vacuum when they very clearly do not, and historical context as well as intersectionality play integral roles in perpetuating marginalization. I think this argument can work in some cases when it's used in conflicts that aren't necessarily affected by external factors. I think it's a great tool when building empathy to help some people step outside of their own perspective and to understand what another person might be feeling. So for instance, a child hits another child and you are disciplining this child and asking them how they would feel if they were the one who was hit. In that scenario, both parties are pretty equal, which makes it an appropriate situation to apply "if the roles were reversed" argument. And while I understand the sentiment when people use that argument to justify that Dakota can very well be a victim in this situation, it ignores the very real component of DV that is influenced heavily by gender and the historical oppression of women. So in my opinion, I would caution against using this argument because I don't think it's exactly robust and can be easily refuted when we consider all of the other intersectionalities that come into play. So instead, I think what would be best is to just recognize that men are often not believed when they are victims of DV, and when we're presented with evidence that we can see and hear where a man is seemingly the victim, I think it's important that we do give that perspective more consideration without assuming that there was another incident that led up to it. And again, I understand and acknowledge that reactive is very common. I also think that we should be very cautious about the things we assume when we just don't know. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. I don't know, I just saw the discourse around this and I was pretty disappointed because I really felt like we had reached a point in society where we could acknowledge that men can also be victims of DV, even if they were a perpetrator at some point. But finally, I think the most important part is that we consider that there seems to be a lot of evidence that points toward her child being injured in this incident. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing to me. Hearing her child scream "mommy" was gut-wrenching, especially after she did nothing at all to go and console her. I'm a pet parent. I have 2 beautiful, wonderful angel baby dogs, and there have been times where I've accidentally stepped on their little tiny baby paws, and I've felt horrible like the worst person on earth. And I'm sure many other pet parents have probably had very similar experiences and very similar reactions. And immediately when that happens, we rush to our pets, console them, and make sure that they know that it was an accident. We love them and we care about them, and it's something that we feel really guilty about. So it's just even more gut-wrenching that Taylor didn't even try to console her child when her child was bawling, and she didn't have enough self-control to stop herself from acting impulsively for the own safety of her child. Anyway, I will shut the fuck up now and let me know what you all think about this in the comments down below. I wonder, do you have a different take than I do? Or maybe there's a perspective that I haven't considered. Either way, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you all about what you think about this. And with that being said, I think it's time for me to log off. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, liking this video, leaving a comment down below, and maybe check out one of my other videos. Thank you again so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see y'all in the next one.